Greetings, everyone. This is Jim Adams from Site Midwest USA, and today we're going to present a seminar on best practices, Supplier's Guide to Best Practices and Incentives. It's going to be sponsored by RMC, and they've got a few words we're going to say for you and some pictures maybe in the discussion. In the meantime, I want everybody to know that you write notes for a moderator. If you have any questions or if you want something that you want us to stop and ask a panelist, you don't have to wait till the end. You can just send us a note on the WebEx series, and we will get your question in before the end of the conference hour. So, moderator, I'm Jim Adams. I'm the CRO for Performance Strategies. Full disclosure, I work with one of the panelists. I'll explain that when we go through. I'd like to introduce our great panelists. First, we're going to start with Mary Albert, who's a CMP. She's a Senior Event Purchasing Manager. She's a member of 110 Client Procurement Team as a Senior Event Purchasing Manager. She's responsible for negotiating the best possible rates, value-added items, and contract terms and conditions for 110's valued clients. She's worked 6 years with the West Coast Automotive vertical. She also is a geographic subject matter expert for a number of regions, including Texas, United Kingdom, Eastern Europe, and Canada. She stays current on new products and changes within those destinations, industry trends, and vendor agreements. Mary's been in the incentive industry 29 years. She started her career with Merritt's Travel. I knew back then, Mary. I don't know if you remember me or not, but she started her career with Merritt's Travel in St. Louis, and she worked there 18 years, including 3 years with Merritt's Canada. Then a year with American Express in a purchasing role before moving to the client side of the business with Lafayette Life as manager of meeting plan and marketing. She did communications for 2 years there, moved back to the third-party side. We worked in Arizona as a purchasing manager for Scare Group in the pharmaceutical sector. But like many, she missed the incentive industry, and she joined 110. She's had her CMP accreditation since 2000, and she's received a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration from Culver-Stockton College in Canton, Missouri, a Master of Arts degree in International Affairs from Washington, St. Louis, and a Bachelor of Arts in Advertising Design from IADT, Tampa, Florida. So, Mary, thank you very much for being on the call. Next, we have who I work with on a daily basis, Darcy, Andry, who's our Vice President of Product Development at Performance Strategies. She's been in the industry over 20 years experience designing, buying, planning, and operating group incentive programs worldwide. She designs and buys a group travel incentive programs for Performance Strategies and BTE. We actually purchased BTE where Darcy had spent a number of years prior to joining us to get Darcy and one of her co-workers on our board because they brought a lot of talent. And we call her the designer of dreams because she tries to make sure the places they go and the experience they have are the kind of things they dream about. Her best experience was she was a salesperson before she got this job in the telecommunications industry, and she actually won some programs, so she knows from a participant's viewpoint and from a buyer's viewpoint. And then we're lucky enough to have Melissa Daniels, a seventh-generation Texan, also a graduate of Baylor University, which I think is a requirement for seventh-generation Texans, and she has a major in broadcast journalism. After college, she interviewed with Hyatt Hotels, became a corporate trainee, learned about the business, and it chose sales as her concentration. In June, Melissa celebrated 30 years with Hyatt. She's done global sales for 27 of those years. Melissa, everybody in this room says congratulations. That's an unbelievable record. She says sight is near and dear to her heart, and she was on the committee, the Classic, for 6 years and co-chair of the Classic for 2 years. She lives with her husband Patrick and 2 children, Blake and Sydney, in Cockapoo Valley in Pino, Texas. Cockapoo is just a first-generation Texan. So now I'm going to switch subjects before we get to the actual and I want to talk about something that you can help in our industry, and everybody in this phone call can help. even in your leisure time, even when you're taking your kids to soccer games and you're staying in the kind of hotels we never stay in as an industry. If you have traffic cam, you can make a difference. Traffic cam enables you to help combat sex trafficking by uploading photos of the hotel rooms you stay in when you travel. Traffickers regularly post photographs of their victims posted in hotel rooms for online advertisements. Photographs or evidence can be used to find and prosecute the perpetrators of these crimes. So in order to use these photos, investigators have to have a database that determines where the photos were taken. The traffic cam is to create a database of hotel room images that an investigator can then efficiently search in order to find other images that were taken in the same location as images part of their investigation. The cam was created in 2015 by the Exchange Initiative. The Exchange Initiative is committed to combating commercial sexual exploitation of children. Their mission is to provide resources, information, and networking solutions to combat sex trafficking in the United States. The Exchange Initiative was created by NICS Conference and Meeting Management to empower individuals and organizations with the resources to help end this horrible practice. And there are just 13 U.S. companies and 45 worldwide honored as 2014 top members by the internationally recognized Tourism Child Protection Code of Conduct. So this is something that you can get at the Google store or you can get on the App Store. You put in your phone and then check into a hotel. And besides, again, it doesn't have to be the Ritz-Carltons and the Marriotts and the Starwoods. It can be if you're at the Baymont Inn in a soccer tournament. You take pictures and you take pictures all around the room. You take pictures and then all of a sudden they've got a database that can tell when these kids are being advertised where to look. And it's involved, it's a lot of people, they've had arrests from this. It's a wonderful resource. And as an industry, we support it. So I wholeheartedly would ask everybody after this best practices to join us and put it on your own phone. Now we're going to get into the webinar today with best practices. And we got this into several segments. The first one is RFPs. So I'm going to start with Melissa. Melissa, is there a specific turnaround time that's become an industry standard for hotels and DMCs to respond to an RFP?
Thanks, Jen. Can you hear me okay? Just want to make sure before I start talking. Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. So lots of times we see a 24-hour to a 48-hour turnaround time on RFP. That is a reasonable time, and it is a standard time we're seeing. One of the things I just want to make aware, though, if you are putting that 24-hour time frame on there, a big deal is that the hotels have to go through a DBR or a daily business review. Some hotels have those twice a day with their teams, and then some only have them once a day. So let's say that you send that RFP in the afternoon and you do need that 24-hour to the next afternoon. They might have to wait till the morning for that DBR to be able to get you an answer back. What we're seeing a lot of, though, is people are giving a little bit more time for an answer, and I just caution you to be careful on that. It's, a week away, because what happens is you have all these other RFPs coming in that are a shorter time period, and obviously they get on the top of the pile. So the thing I would say is give yourself a little bit of leeway that you have enough time to get those answers back and back to your client. The pan mode that we see is sometimes they're asking for that RFP right up to the point when they needed to get it to their client, and they'll come back to me or someone at the hotel and say, I need it, and the hotel says, I thought you didn't need it until end of day. Well, I only needed it by noon. So, use that buffer, be careful, but the 24-hour, 48, I think is pretty feasible. I don't know what Darcy and Mary think, but, that's kind of coming from my perspective.
Any particular thoughts to add on this?
I'm totally, usually I'm totally fine with 40 hours. I mean, unless, you know, we're in a weird situation where we need to turn it around quicker than that. Sometimes I put at your convenience if I know that I have, you know, a couple of weeks to pull the proposal around. So you're saying I probably should not do that?
I'm saying, yeah, I would give some kind of clarification because, you know, they're getting in fast and furious these days, and you know, if you know that you've got some leeway on one and the other one's due in 48 hours or 72 hours, you're going to go to that one first, you know. So I want some kind of boundary. That's my opinion.
And talking about in terms of everything, like rooms, function space, everything like that.
Yeah.
Mary, thoughts?
So we usually request 48 hours, and if it's shorter or if it's on a day that I need it at noon, I try to make it everywhere in the RFP to make sure they see it in one place or another. But yeah, I think the standard, you know, 24, 48.
Great. Mary, I've got you talking. I'd like to know, do you think there's any advantages or disadvantages for planners to book hotel space through a local DMC versus dealing directly with the hotel?
So I would say it depends on what market you're in. I don't believe there really is an advantage in North America. I do use my DCs sometimes in Europe, sometimes in South America, places where there's a linguistic challenge and they may not understand things and there's a delay. That's a great area to make sure you have your DMC looped in because they can help you get your point across and so there's no mixed messages. And then there are times that in some places, I know in Italy, my supplier has been able to get a better rate than what I have been able to get. And so sometimes I will ask, I mean, I'll the RFP and get the price. And then if we can't get anything, I may ask the DMs to step in or see if they have any relationships. But that's part of knowing your DMC and knowing what values they can bring and knowing what their strengths are as well.
So verify this, because I think I understand you, but for the benefit of our audience.
Sure.
You'd send out 2 RFPs in this case. You'd send one to the hotels directly, one to the DMC, and then if the hotels didn't answer you as favorably as you thought they could, then you go back to the DMC and say, do you have a relationship here? Is that what you're saying, or did I misunderstand?
Yes and no. Yes. So first I usually send out my own RFP and try to respond and try to start working with a hotel. If I find that there's I'm in a situation currently where I've been trying to work with the hotel and literally their English is not good enough and I don't know their language at all. So I have asked my DMC, so basically I have sent my specs to them so that then they can go. I asked that, well, they also have a relationship. They had mentioned that they had one and said that they could help me, but let us have your specs. And so I sent my specs to them then, same specs basically, and then they were actually able to get a less rate than what I had.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. Anything from Darcy or Melissa on this you want to add, or should I go to the next?
Well, I can also add that in a lot of places, we don't deal with same destinations over and over again. So sometimes I feel like going through a DMC is valuable in that they deal with those properties on a daily basis, and they know, what the situation is with that hotel better than I would. They know if they're group friendly, how they work with groups, or if any, management changes that have affected service.
Okay.
Totally agree, Darcy.
Yeah.
Okay. Darcy, aside from the tangible information necessary to respond to an RFP, dates, rocks, meeting specs, schedule, Is there other information you typically put in for your suppliers, and if so, why?
There are a few things. One would be their destination and property history, because I feel like this gives the hotel an indication of the expectation level of the client. You know, also give them information such as this very high maintenance client. They expect, you know, what expectations are. Wise, if this is a really tight budget program, I will express that because I don't want to waste time going back and forth. I need the lowest possible rate they can possibly give, and I need it up front. So there are a couple of the things. Certainly, the more information you can give a hotel, because it gives them an idea of what exactly you're looking for, and perhaps it can give them a competitive advantage if they're one to dive into the details.
Anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think so. Those are great. That's great, Darcy, because those things that you just mentioned, I just checked off 3 of my things that I had thought of as well. So I totally agree with you. One of the things I would do, there's so many hotels that have lead catchers these days that are just watching the leads come in and they need to know how to deploy those out. I would put where the contract's going to be signed. If it's a third party that's booking for an end user client, put where that location is, because then they're going to deploy on who in sales handles that group. And other thing you might want to add if you have this information is, kind of goes back to what Darcy said on budget, some kind of food and beverage minimum that you're expecting. So they kind of know where you're wanting to hit, and you know, you need a $100,000 minimum and they're going to come back to you with a $300,000 minimum. So I would put in there that expectation, just being as upfront as you can.
Great. Well, let's move on to DMCs and how we're involved. And I hope you, we have one quick question. Melissa, what's a lead catcher? Can you? Good
question. Sure. No, absolutely. And sorry if I use some terms that other people don't use. Usually a lead catcher is someone within the hotel that all of those CVent and Starseed and electronic RFPs are coming into. If they're being sent directly to the hotel themselves, they will get their name is in the computer, and so those are sent directly to them on the hotel code, and then they pick them up, look at them, and then filter them out to people within the sales team. It's one individual person. So, for instance, as a global salesperson, when I see a lead that comes in on CVent, let's say, it will say, for the hotel's perspective, that lead catcher is always on there. So the person who basically catches it and tosses it back out to somebody else. Most of the time, that's a systems admin person. And what that means is it's somebody who's making sure that, you know, the bookings are in their system correctly as they go through. And when they turn definite, when a contract is signed, they're the ones turning that in the system. So they're pretty brilliant, smart people, but so many times I get questions back if it's not on the CVent of where is the signature, who's it coming of, where is the end user located, or was this contract going to be signed, so they deploy correctly on their own teams.
Great. So I'm going to move to DMCs. With Darcy on this. Darcy, what are some of the key advantages to working with a local DMC?
Well, us planners like to think that we know a lot about destinations. Clearly, the local DMCs know far more. They are up on the current trends in a destination, the most recent management changes like we talked about in this question, and they really have the expertise of the destination that some of them do not have.
Okay. Mary and Dad on that?
Really, I would say, well, you know, they're your boots on the ground. So,
right. Yeah.
Even as you make those, you want to maintain those relationships, and people, just like in the hotel business in the DMC world, that move from city to city, and when you find a good DMC person, make sure that you stay connected with them because you never know, maybe.
That's a great point.
Yep.
Mary, while we've got you, what key elements should planners look at in deciding which DMC partner to utilize?
Well, it's not just only their proposals that you need to look at. I mean, obviously you need to have something that shows well, that gets the creativity and all of those things and checks all those boxes for you for your proposals. But the other thing is you need a partner, a true partner, and you need to make sure that your legal expectations, your insurance expectations, that they can meet those and be a partner with you.
Okay. Anything to add to that?
Well, I think for the hotel's perspective, one of the things a DMC does for us is they honestly make us look good. They can make a dinner even more exciting with the creativity that they have. The creativity that they bring out of the box is wonderful. I always suggest my hotel partners, if they're having a site come in or they're trying to showcase something, that they bring in a DMC partner. Where they, sometimes I would just caution, sometimes there are preferred DMCs for certain hotels. If you have a preferred DMC in that area that is not that hotel's preferred, ask them. Make sure that they allow that DMC that's your preferred to come in, because it's going to make the hotel look good and it's going to make you feel comfortable going into that. Because, I think where the hotels run into a challenge, if you will, is if there are 2 or 3 DMCs in the area and they're having a site come in, who they partner with to work on that site, showcase everything. And so just because they partnered with one, if you like another or you feel better about another, I would always ask that question.
Melissa, I've got a question specifically for you, since what you just did. I'm noticing sometimes now that if you've got a preferred DMC, hotels want to charge us 5%. Times it's a set fee, bring in our DMC or to do that. Do you have a corporate policy addressing that, and how hard is it to get dropped off of the contract?
We do not have a corporate policy on that. It really depends by location where they are. I find that more in Mexico than I do anywhere else. Sometimes I will get a call just because of global sales, why do they want to use our DMC? We get this with AV companies too, so that's a whole other menagerie we're not going into. But we do have a corporate policy to answer that question. And your second question is,
how easy is it for us as third-party planners to get that removed from a contract? Some things in a contract people dig their heels in on, so they just try to increase their revenue stream.
It probably depends on how strong, I'd go for the highest person that you can to make that decision, either the director of events, director of the sales, or you have to go to the general manager, do that. I do get those questions, but we don't dig our heels in too much at our properties. Sometimes overseas we do, and I will get the regional vice presidents involved and explain the situation, explain the revenue that comes into our company from the company I'm dealing with, and important it is to not dig those heels in. But I always think it's a conversation. And I think if you're going back and forth on emails too much, you got to pick up that phone.
Okay, I'm going to address some of the comments we're getting. We're getting a lot of comments from our listeners on this, and I'll address them before we go to the commercial. So, Darcy, what role can local DMCs play in safety and risk management?
Well, we would certainly, that goes back to the prior question, I guess, is that really need their assistance and to be a partner in that area. We certainly want to make sure that anything that they're proposing that we have bought, is not put any of our clients or participants at risk. We want to make sure that everyone's safe at all times and make sure that they had experience in doing what they've proposed and what we've bought. So we really want someone who's going to be attentive to that.
And you also are nodding your head about the contracts.
Yeah.
That they've got the appropriate contracts to back up our contracts and that.
Right,
That's
right.
a big role. Mary, how does a planner work with the DMC to develop impactful CSR activities?
So, this is an interesting question because I had this conversation about 8 months ago. Basically, I think it's understanding what the planner and what your end user client is looking for in a CSR activity. You know, is it giving to something? Is it going and actually, you know, taking a day to go paint or help build or something like that, where they doing something? Is it, you know, supplies to a local school? I think there's a lot of different CSR events, and I think it also depends on what part of the world you're in and what their needs are. You need to know your DMC needs to have a good of what is in the area, and that's because they are experts, so they should know. But I also found this conversation kind of escalated a little bit when I was in South America, and when I was in a forum similar to this, and we were talking about CSR, and the Minister of Tourism said that he's tired of things coming in and just bringing supplies or because he felt like that was teaching the smaller children to almost beg, like whenever they saw somebody that they would expect they were going to get pencils or something from them. And he point blank asked me, how do you find out? And I said, well, I work with my DMCs, and it's an education process. And so I think that's another conversation, especially if you're in a foreign country, to ask your DMC, are there any CSR movements that the Department or the Ministry of Tourism has? Because sometimes those are a source that maybe we're not aware of, and I had never thought of going to them.
Right.
Ask about that. So that was something that was kind of enlightening, a conversation that I had, like I said, about 8 months ago.
Great feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay. Mary, I'm going to ask you this again, and then I'm going to ask both Darcy and Melissa to add on to it. But what kind of satisfaction guarantees can DMCs offer to planners? How are planners and clients think they should be compensated when something does not meet with satisfaction? So I'll start with you, but I'd kind of like to hear the whole panel's thoughts on this. Thoughts?
So I think it all depends on how the contract is written to start with, because help determine what is compensated. I also think that as you're working with your DMCs, and if you are truly partnering and there's a transparency as you are working through things, that a lot of things not go awry. That's when we have different expectations that are not void on either side. I think that's when things start to be satisfactory to people. So there needs to be checkpoints throughout the process to make sure that everybody's still on point and that the dream is the dream and that the dream does not turn into the nightmare.
Great.
Excellent. I couldn't agree more. Communication is key, and if a DMC does not know your expectation, then how are they to deliver it? On the flip side, though, if you have communicated properly you have given them your vision, for example, in decor, or how an event is going to unfold. You've spoken with them, you've provided them with briefings, summaries, and they don't deliver, then we've got a problem. And then a direct conversation needs to take place. And I don't care whether it's in the contract or not. I expect some sort of in the situation.
I agree with you. I think that if you're going to have, you that expectation out there, but I think that you should put it as part of the contract. I've seen it as part of the contracts, and I think that if have to come to some agreement, right, on both sides, but if something doesn't meet satisfaction, then it should in there that a percent off of what you're doing, 5, 10, whatever it is, should come off of that final master bill based on not reaching that expectation.
Okay. I'm going to give some questions and some editorial from our listeners, and we appreciate both. And I'm going to make a general statement, and if you'd all like to give us some feedback on that as well, that would be great. But we got this obviously from two different sides. When we were talking earlier about local DMC, one of our listeners talked about local DMC can bring better pricing. We were taught in-house DMCs. We were told that typically a hotel or a salesperson at an in-house DMC can get commissions back upwards to 40%, which would be a huge markup on what's already marked up and marked up again by us. So that could cause some risk. When we're talking about that great feedback we got about going to the Minister of Tourism, somebody suggested you could also ask your convention bureau at town the same question about meaningful CSR that people enjoy and appreciate it. I've noticed today we've actually got 2 people in purchasing and we've got 1 person in global sales of a hotel. And we're doing this because we want to establish what individuals in the roles view as best practices. Okay, and so far you all have done a great job, and I appreciate that. So here's the one question that we have left on this. I'm going to go to Darcy. How do DMCs foster a better understanding of their value to planners and to clients?
I think you have to build a relationship with your DMC and make sure that you're on the same page. When I work with a DMC, I want a partner, and I want them to care as much about my client as I do, and care about me and how I look in front of my client, and care about my executives and how they look in front of their team. So it's just all about communication. We certainly do them, and we expect them to value us. We are bringing them business. We are bringing groups, their countries. So I think it's just about relationship building, getting to know your contact, and valuing each other, honestly. I mean, I know it's kind of vague, but that's just the way I thought it.
Thanks. Mary, anything to add?
Not really, because I think you've really covered it all. It's all about commission and, partnering.
Great. Melissa, any thoughts?
I agree with both of them. I think it's important, if you have those relationships, to get the DMs involved from the beginning. A lot of times they should be adding and showing you value, of showing you the most cost-effective way to do something and giving you their ideas, because this is their land. This is where they live and breathe, and I think it was Mary that said, they're the boots on the ground. They're the ones that should give you those ideas. Hey, don't do this on this day because, traffic back into the city is really tough, or it might cost you more because of this day, or, but like Darcy said, if they're involved and they really care about the customers that you're bringing to their area, you'll be able to see that. And I think that's should be happening in that fact.
There's a bonus question, and any of you panelists are welcome to jump in. Any of our listeners are welcome to give us some feedback, which I'll cover after the sponsorship talk. One thing I've noticed as an individual is that in our business, DMCs a lot of times are locally owned, started out as family businesses and stuff, and now we're moving into second generations. And we found sometimes where we've been a valued member to the people that started the DMC, the second generations dropped the ball on some very basic stuff, and we've been treated more like an association client than an incentive client. Have any of you noticed that trend, and is there anything specifically we're doing to address it, other than intercommunication level when it's a new member at the helm of the DMC?
Well, I can speak to this. There's a generation, and you've dealt with the older generation. Perhaps it's just a matter of refreshing memory or informing them of the history that you've had, the programs that you've operated, what you liked, what you loved about their organization, and just giving them a little bit of a refresher course on the history and your expectations moving forward if they're not performing at the same level.
Okay. Other panelists want to add anything, or are we good?
I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, word from our sponsor, and today that sponsor is RMC, your destination connection. RMC has got offices all across the country, primarily west, although also in Bluffton and Savannah, Carolinas. They're in Austin and San Antonio, Texas, Los Cabos, Scottsdale, Santa Fe, Salt Lake City, Park City, Napa and Sonoma, Lake Tahoe, Jackson Hole, and Big Sky, and they cover most major Colorado incentive users: Gateway, Aspen, Beaver Creek, Vale, Breckenridge, Denver, and Colorado Springs. C says they believe in the power of experiences. America's largest privately owned destination management company pride themselves on activating our amazing distinction organizations to create inspirational, innovative programs that guests will rave about for years to come. Anyone can be a DMC, no one can be an RMC. And then ROI versus ROE. I put this because I'm in a room with a wordsmith. This is the kind of thing he would write. Return on investment has become return on experience. The experience we provide guests results in increased productivity and sales growth. This is a list of some hotels where they've got operations. And I'd like to tell you the RMC advantage. They've got one partnership fan experience. That facilitated site tour, airport meet and greet, round-trip transportation for 2 guests, amenities, off-site lunch or dinner experience, one exclusive RMC newsletter feature, and some decor theme. They've also been proud to say they've been recognized as one of the top 25 DMCs in the world by Special Events Magazine since 2012. They've been featured in Forbes magazine, top 100 women-owned businesses since 2011. The Best of State in Utah 2012, 13, 14, 15, and 17. They've got 7 DMCPs strong for company-wide affiliates and are ADME certified. So, RMD, we thank you for your sponsorship, and without your kind, generous support, we could not do these webinars. Thanks very much, RMC. And now we'd like to move to the hotel side. And Mary, I'm going to start with you by asking, what some hotels and brands above others in relationship to the specific needs of incentive and meeting planners?
So some of the things that I have noticed, I have some hotel partners, and one of the things that I can always count on when I go to some is that not only is the level of service across the board and the type of product that we're going to receive no matter where in the world we go is the same, but the attention to detail, even on a site inspection. For example, one of my hoteliers, I was in Argentina, and the site inspection made it where they not only showcased the rooms as we went around in the function space, but also the types of amenities, and they showed the detail that they could go. And I mean, I wasn't the only company on this particular trip, and they utilized Evans' logo in some shape or form in some type of amenity, and how they can showcase of what they can do, not only with their culinary but also with their AV partners inside their hotel. So it's the attention to detail, you know, showcasing not only their product but also all the extra services. The other thing that is really that I find is great is that hoteliers now, they understand that we're not just bringing people to have a great dinner there or to, you know, have an enjoyable experience in a great room product. They understand that we're going after the experience. And there are a lot of hotels that are finding unique things in their backyard and how they can do that, how they can couple them to help bring you another option for, say, a final night dinner, maybe at some place that they can cater to off property, or even some they're bringing in because of their location. They're in a unique environment, and so maybe there's some activity that is specific to that area that they can do right from their grounds. So they're offering something different, not a regular activity, but something that is just for that location. So I'm starting to see hotels blossom more into the experience realm of this as well. And that's a great thing because it not only adds to what they can offer us, but it helps us solidify that experience for our clients.
I love that. I love everything that you just said. But do you find that sometimes you receive that information too late? Like I want to know some of those things in the proposal process before I present to a client so I can talk about some of those things. And oftentimes we find these things out when we're in the site inspection after we've sold the program, and then it's kind of hard to come up with the funds to implement those items. Is that what you find, or are you asking some magic questions?
No. Actually, I really think that's kind of a 50-50 thing. I said because I noticed that, and so now I'm kind of asking some of those questions when I send out the RFPs, especially if I know that I have a hot button, that I have an really an experience-driven client. So. Yeah, I agree with you. I was having that, and now I've kind of started asking more of that in the RFP process.
Okay.
Great feedback from both of you. Anything to add?
The only thing that I would add to that, because I totally agree with everything that they said, is that most of the hotels currently are, based in my brand, are being challenged to come up with presentations that don't show you anything that you can find on the fact sheet or on their website. So they currently have presentations in their arsenal, and I agree with Mary. We see a lot of incentive planners that are adding a question to their RFP that says, the presentation of unique experiences at your resort or at your property. It could be a city destination in Buenos Aires, wherever. And they've gotten that made. So it's not something that they have to create. They just continue to add to it, or they can pull from it. And that would help you and give you different ideas but it is all about that uniqueness. It is about being creative. And even when I take hotels on the road to do presentations, they're not allowed to talk about how many rooms they have and how many dining facilities and all of that. So I would just push them a little harder and ask those questions.
Listen, I'd like to give you some feedback for your hotel on what, as a salesperson, I consider an RFP. I check into a site inspection and there's a bottle of wine or liquor waiting for me and I don't drink. I prefer I get Frescas because I love Fresca. And
Make it
Yep.
that.
it makes a big difference.
I am right now.
I also worry about my clients who are alcoholics and they get the same kind of treatment and nobody's asked. But the other thing, when you're making sales calls, the price of admission to the webinar has already been met several times over. But when you talked about, don't talk to me about rooms,
Right.
experience, a salesperson can sell the fact that you've got a Western setup for a rodeo night on your property much easier than I can sell your 350 rooms and your 5 restaurants.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it's just part of that, how you make money by being one that brings that uniqueness to the presentation. So I'm glad you went down that corridor. How can hoteliers and planners work together from the onset to avoid conflict and problems?
I think one of the things that we always try to ask, or we should be asking, is what issues planners have with hotels that they have in the past that they don't want to see repeated. They don't have to talk about which hotels. We don't really care that. We just care about the issues, and so we don't make the same mistake over again. I think as upfront as you can be on the planning side about what the hot buttons are and what the expectations are. And like Darcy said, it's communication all across the line. But if we knew those hot buttons and those expectations, from concessions to asking them what their service scores are in certain areas, to where they fall within their chain of brands on those levels and their service levels, anything like that helps both sides understand what the overall expectation is. So are questions that can be asked, and the more that they can share about what they're good at, I think that's what it'll come up with. Or, we've received, I'll give an example. One of my clients, the process on the past 2 years of one of these conferences was horrendous. They talked it in nauseam at the hotel prior to it coming there, and it still didn't work. So the events manager that handled it at one of my hotels, that was her biggest thing with the staff. It's like, I don't want to see one person waiting. I don't want to see this. And I will tell you, she used those specific things that he really didn't want to happen so much in a line at the coffee shop. That was the other one I remember. And they did a great job. But it was because that planner had said, she had said to the planner, what bothered you about the last conferences that you had? And she was able to list about 5 to 10 things. And my events manager ran with that and really pushed that so that they would not have that experience again.
That is really awesome. But I would add to that it's important to communicate that early, not at the pre-con.
So I'm saying, even when you're doing the contracting stage, you know what I mean? Like way back.
Yeah, I've seen situations though when some things are not brought up until the pre-con, and then they expect the hotel to magically work in their favor, and
Right.
Early communication is key, I think.
Okay, thank you. Melissa, what can planners do to make sure that our guests aren't walked as a result of a hotel overselling?
Well, I think for us, I just actually am going through one this week on this because it's a peak time in this one hotel. The hotel was ready to give up the rooms. They're just, we can sell them, let us give them up. But, I think guaranteeing payment on a block of rooms that you truly feel like you're going to pick up, whether you have names for those or not. In certain industries, we see that all the time. But that guaranteeing payment on that block when you're beyond cutoff is because then the hotel has the guarantee that a day out, you're not going to let go of them. It depends on the city as well or the destination and how far away it is, that resale time period. But guarantee on that, as long as the planner is willing to do that, we're good. When we start get to that time, we're not going to sell those rooms. That's when everybody starts to get into that panic mode. And it kind of with the next part, talking about walking. In opinion, I hate to say this, but it's a lot easier to walk a leisure guest than is a guest with a group, because most of the time with the groups, you have some kind of clause within the contract that's a walk clause, and they will be responsible, they meaning the hotel, for more cost to take care of that guest somewhere else, bring that guest back somewhere else. Then they're also dealing with the frustration from that guest that's the group on walking the leisure customer. So, and in some cities, it's not good because some cities, big oversell, and they take a chance. And that's when everybody gets nervous.
Angry.
Right.
We've also noticed that since some of the mergers in the major hotel chains, one brand that no longer has somebody from that brand as a manager, and favorite clients from another brand seem to get some favorite.
I don't have to deal with that right now. No, but honestly, I mean, that is part of my role in global sales to adjusted it 2 days ago. I had a phone call to a hotel and I said, what do they need to do? I said, if they can guarantee these rooms and a certain number that they know that they're going to use, whether they use them or not, will you hold on to them? And this is a situation where there's not a hotel 30 miles because there's a big event going on. And they're willing to do it, but it took a phone call. And sometimes that's what you need to do. And on the other end of it as well. So.
Okay. Thank you. In terms of construction remodeling, are hotels required to advise planners in the proposal process of upcoming activities that may not affect their program if they're aware of it?
Is this coming back to me?
Yeah, I'll start with you, sure.
I'm like, well, here's my answer, 1,000% of what that was. I believe that, nobody likes to be blindsided, and that things coming, and everyone wants to be able to make provisions, around that situation. What the challenge happens is when leadership approves budget for some type of renovation. And let's say they've asked 3 years in a row to get guest rooms done. And this third year, they finally say, okay, you know what, we're going to give you the money, you've got it, and this is when it can happen. So then it goes into the stage of what definite groups do we have on the books, and the hotels that do it right go actively and very quickly start making those phone calls. I had a group recently at one of my hotels that they had scheduled the renovation to start prior to this group going in. And this group had an experience in the past I knew about of having to deal with the renovation, and before they would never go to a hotel that was going to do that again. we actually, because it was far enough in advance, we actually convinced the hotel to hold the reservation until that group checked out. Now, it wasn't a month. It was 7 or 8 days. And did they start immediately when that checked out? Yes, they did. But I think those conversations and things need to happen, whether it's decking of the pool or whatever it is, even if they're going to take a floor out above and a floor out below and do the rooms in between, that conversation still needs to happen. What?
Dan?
I agree with that, and then I also think that sometimes when you're on site and things have happened, for example, I just went through this here, hurricane blows through the Caribbean, and well, you're still going and you're fine, and the hotel is good, is in good shape, has survived things, and then they find it rains, just a normal rain, and they find out there's a leak. Well, you can't, and you're on the ground there. I'm like, talk to your own people and let them understand what renovation and construction means and remodeling means. I mean, the thing was patched. They had a small rain. There was rain coming through. They had to patch the roof, and it unfortunately had to be above the hospitality desk. The hotel reaccommodated them into another area until they could finish the work, and they gave them the option to go back to that location. So, I think hotels are trying to do their best. They're trying to give everybody the best experience. But I also think that you can just pull things out when there's things that put it into perspective of what's happening at the hotel and what inconvenience is.
Communication with clients as well as, that's great feedback. Thanks, Mary.
Yeah.
Our bonus session is on attorneys, and a lot of what we just talked about with hotels is what led to this talk about attorneys, and we've just got a couple minutes. I'm going to read the first two questions, but I'm going to ask the third one as a group to respond. What percentage of the business is touched by attorneys? When we had a rehearsal, we thought it was typically about 20%. What best practice was it you suggest in dealing with legal departments? That's communicating a quick turnaround time, setting some kind of deadline for getting the answers back. And the last one, I'd like any of the panelists who feel like they can respond on this. What can be done to avoid losing momentum in your planning process, waiting on approval from legal departments? Any thoughts? I come with a good question, and I can stump the
You
answer.
did.
Pretty good.
Actually, and I would say that, there's all kinds of pieces to our programs, and just because one spot is kind of derailed by legal or, sidelined for a little bit, there are other areas in your program, and I have noticed that when I start talking about those and the hotel doesn't get as nervous when they know, okay, I'm still moving forward, so then it helps buy time because they know it's not like I'm waiting and this is going to drop. The wrong answer. I'm still moving the process forward in some way.
That's feedback. Well, everyone, did any more questions come in or comments? We appreciate everybody taking time to take out of their busy days. I really want to thank Robert, CMP from 110. I'd like to thank Darcy, Andry from Performance Strategies, and also Melissa Daniels, the 7th generation Texan from Hyatt, because they gave us great information. I've been in the business a couple years, and I picked up quite a few things today that I can use in the future. I hope you all did as well. I'd like to thank the group of people here that we've got. Put these webinars on is way more than a moderator. We've got technical folks that are working to make this all happen. And of course, we can get this done without sponsors. So thanks everybody today. If you get any more feedback and you get directed to somebody specifically, we'll get that communication going for you. And we'll talk to you in a couple months with our third webinar in our trilogy. Thank you so much. Goodbye from Jim Adams and the panel. Bye-bye.